if the Tories want any hope of winning in 2024 or whenever the next election is, they've got to rediscover the stuff that made him popular in 2019, which was not this sort of Thatcherite impression, but was instead something that tried to bring back growth to parts of the countries that have been left behind, and also had a socially conservative emphasis about tackling crime, lowering migrations. That's what our report is saying this morning.
Looks like the Conservatives, speaking of regeneration, actually, they're finally ready for Rishi. He'll have a hell of a job. A new poll for the Onward think tank shows that the Conservative Party is now in a worse position than 1997, when Labour won a landslide. Adam Hawksbee is Deputy Director of Onward and joins us now. Good morning, Adam.
Good morning.
How bad is it then? Let's get a scale of how bad it is to begin with.
It's very, very bad. So we asked people out of 100 how likely they would be to vote Conservative or consider voting Conservative. 35% of the public say 0 out of 100. And if you make that between 0 and 10, it's about half of the public, it's 46%. And the tipping point at which people become more likely to vote Conservative, that was 43 in 2019, so still a pretty high number. It's now 57. So on basically any metric you look at, things are really, really bad for the Tories. And there are a couple of reasons for that. One is integrity and honesty. So when you ask people what characteristics they think define the Tories, untrustworthy, dishonest, and self-serving are the top three. For dishonest, that number's 3 times higher than it is for Labour. But it's also about policy. So this kind of libertarian cosplay that we got under Liz Truss has no real public support. It's a very, very small minority of the public that believe in some of these low tax libertarian type ideas. And what our report today says is that if the Tories want any hope of winning in 2024 or whenever the next election is, they've got to rediscover the stuff that made him popular in 2019, which was not this sort of Thatcherite impression, but was instead something that tried to bring back growth to parts of the countries that have been left behind, and also had a socially conservative emphasis about tackling crime, lowering migrations. That's what our report is saying this morning. So
where does that leave Rishi Sunak? Do you think he's a person who might be able to inherit the mantle to deliver that? Because he was there for levelling up, so he presumably does agree with that. He's socially conservative. Is it possible that he could, he was accused of being a socialist chancellor, so presumably the redistribution side of the ball he can do a little bit as well?
Yeah, lots of people getting accused of being a socialist over the summer. Yeah. I think he has got the ability to do that. And as you say, with levelling up, he was someone that committed to do that. He's an MP for a North Yorkshire constituency. He's done a lot of work with people like Ben Houchen, the mayor of Tees Valley. So he gets the need for this. The real challenge is going to be that the fiscal situation is now so constrained that investing in some of those big capital projects, providing the money that's needed for public services, is going to involve some massively tough decisions. And the political situation is really tricky. I mean, just looking at Twitter overnight and this morning, there are clearly people in the Conservative Party that did not want a Rishi Sunak premiership, and he's going to have to unite the party behind that sort of 2019 vision. So he's got the potential to do it, but it's going to require a pretty laser-like focus on what we're calling his brand of national conservatism of 2019 inspired conservatism.
And presumably there is this just question of damage done to the brand, isn't there? There's two things here. They've been in power for a very long time, so political gravity would be a huge problem anyway. And secondly, they have spent the last year absolutely trashing their own brand, first with Johnson and parties, then with Liz Truss and sort of economic lunacy, all the backbiting, the fighting, the number of chancellors, the number of prime ministers. Now, that itself will be a hard thing to overcome.
Enormously. But really what history seems to show is that the British public, when they're making decisions at elections, of course they'll think about the credibility of that party and their brand, but actually what they'll look at is what's being offered by the party for the next 5 years or the foreseeable future, and how credible that offer is. And so what Rishi needs to really focus on, if it is him that wins later today, is restoring integrity and credibility, showing that the party is honest, will do what it says, and then beginning to deliver on some of those promises from 2019 on things like hospitals, police numbers, bringing jobs back to areas of the country. If that happens, and it's a very, very narrow path, then the Conservatives will be electorally credible. But they're facing a much, much more credible Labour Party, and the team of Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves are putting forward an offer which resonates, particularly on economics, resonates more with the public.
Yeah, and do they have the money to do some of those things as well is another problem they're now facing. Adam, great to speak to you. That's really clearly put. Thanks for joining us today.